I want to go through the Rise of Skywalker box office for the last time here because it's kind of an interesting article. And I want to touch upon something they said about why the Star Wars franchise is declining. So let's take a look at some numbers. Here we go. Article's called A Timeline of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker's Box Office Woes. Because at this point, we pretty much know it all. I'm not even sure if it's out of theaters or not, but at this point, it's over. So they break it down from opening weekend to weekend 2 to weekend 3 to weekend 4. And of course, it gets progressively worse. So let's take a little look at some of the info they got here. Opening weekend. So on the surface, it looked pretty good. For an opening, 177 million, not bad at all. But they say keep this in mind. Disney's latest project had the widest release of any Star Wars film ever. It opened in 4,406 theaters domestically, which was 272 more than The Force Awakens and 174 more than The Last Jedi. And both of these movies earned 248 million and 220 million respectively on opening weekend. So, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe 177 isn't so good, but it's not bad. Here's another interesting point. Rise of Skywalker also opened in nearly 1,300 more theaters than The Phantom Menace, which would eventually earn over 800 million after inflation. Alright, so even though it opened in more theaters, it did worse. So that was weekend 1. Okay, not a huge deal. Off to a slow start, but what happens weekend 2? Heading into the second weekend, a scary thought popped into this Star Wars fan's head. Could Rise of Skywalker join the 100 million losers club? And we know it certainly did. Before weekend 2, there were only 10 members in this club. To join the club, the film must earn 100 million less on its second weekend than it does opening weekend. And of course, Rise of Skywalker did so. So they say here, but Rise of Skywalker's opening weekend came nowhere near that figure. In fact, of all the club members, only Iron Man 3 had earned less than the Rise of Skywalker's 177 million on the 3-day opening. So, weekend 1, okay start but not so good. Weekend 2, 100 million losers club. Weekend 3, what do you know? It got worse. Believe it or not, things got worse from there. After pulling in 34.5 mil on its third weekend, Rise of Skywalker went from owning the 5th worst second weekend drop in the 100 million losers club to sporting the 3rd worst third weekend drop, an insane 81% decline from opening weekend. They also remind us that almost every single film in the club both made more than Rise of Skywalker on opening weekend and had a smaller third weekend drop. So out of all these movies in this club, it's really, really low on the list. Not only did it make the club, but it fantastically made the club. They compare it to The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens decline, and of course, those declines were not as bad. That brings us to weekend 4. Here's where the Rise of Skywalker hits rock bottom. I like the language these guys are using here. Moving beyond the 100 million losers club, it turns out that Disney's latest Star Wars film experienced the worst 4th weekend decline of any movie to ever make at least 175 million on opening weekend. Way to go. That's right. With a mere 15.2 million total, Rise of Skywalker moved past Captain America Civil War and tied Avengers Endgame with its 91.5 fourth weekend decline from opening weekend. They then go on to say that, of course, this was the biggest drop for a Star Wars movie. After 4 weekends, Rise of Skywalker's domestic total stood at 478.3 mil, while The Last Jedi came in at 572.7, and The Force Awakens at 812.7. Looking forward, do I have to read this? Obviously, looking forward, it's not going to make any more money whatsoever. I don't know, maybe $1 million, maybe $500K, maybe $13. What's the difference? Anyway, I'm going to link this article below for you guys who want to go through the numbers for yourself. It's pretty long, pretty lengthy. Of course, I skimmed some details because I want to get to this part of the article that interested me as well. There are plenty of reasons Rise of Skywalker dipped so far down from the first 2 Star Wars sequels on opening weekend, but the simplest theory is this: the franchise is no longer special. Why is that? They say it's no longer special as if somehow people just happen to lose interest in Star Wars. And I'm not talking about quality. I thought Rise of Skywalker was an awesome movie. I'm speaking to the fact that Star Wars used to be a special event, an adventure you had to wait years to experience. Now Star Wars have become ubiquitous, commonplace, a yearly event, and that doesn't include TV projects like The Mandalorian. So they're kind of, in other words, using the burnout or franchise fatigue, old tired piece of crap argument. If you need proof, look no further than the 70 million gap between The Rise of Skywalker and Force Awakens. The anticipation surrounding the first Star Wars movie in 10 years simply wasn't comparable to The Rise of Skywalker's debut. Why is this? What a mystery. So for you guys who are actually scratching your head about this, like, yeah, I wonder why. Well, the problem is Disney completely put down the OT characters. They replaced them with cardboard that people had no emotions for. And when you don't feel for a character, and when you're not curious what happens to that character, and you don't care, you don't want to see the next movie so bad. So, The Last Jedi we wanted to see. I wanted to see The Last Jedi. No spoilers. I happened to get one thing spoiled or something, but I went in like 95% spoiler free. And then, after that, we didn't really want to see The Rise of Skywalker so bad. The first review I ever read of The Last Jedi said I walked out of the movie theater confused. I wasn't sure if I wanted to see the next movie. And that review was accurate. That carried through. When I read that in anticipation, I was like, huh? That doesn't really sound so good. But of course I gave it a chance. So the point here is that these people will not mention the real reasons that the decline in the box office is happening. It's all because of bad writing, bad characterization, and killing the past. I'm no box office expert, not even that good at it. I could look at a few numbers, make a few comparisons, but I'll tell you this. Out of all the excuses they have for why The Rise of Skywalker didn't do good in the box office, compare it to a bunch of other movies in the past, and those movies probably have the same excuses, but did a lot better. So when you think about it, you can kind of extinguish their excuses by saying, hey, these movies also had the same obstacles, the same disadvantages, but they did good. So it's really all about content. Anyway, I'm doing shout-outs, special thanks, things like that. Shout out right now. Shout out to Science Girl. Who's Science Girl? Kind of a interesting shout out for me, isn't it? Science Girl's got a Twitter account with, well, you guessed it, science. 13K followers, pretty damn good, and I actually really like science. Haven't talked about it much because it's not really connected to the content, but anyway, there's your shout out. If you're not subscribed here, click that subscribe button, smash it, press it. If your name's Science Girl, then maybe you should please click that subscribe button. Okay, see you next time.